The intersection of geopolitics and spiritual persistence. Observers of Central Asia often perceive Afghanistan solely through the lens of conflict statistics or political upheaval, yet this perspective misses the profound resilience of spiritual life that persists amidst the world's most challenging geopolitical landscapes. Miriam Adonai's Afghan Mountain Faith challenges this reductionist view by illuminating the intricate ways belief systems are adapted, maintained, and even cultivated in the face of extreme political and social pressure. By centering the narrative on the concept of mountain faith, the text provides a framework for understanding how beauty, worship, and traditional forms of piety sustain spiritual identity within a high-risk environment. The book situates itself within a complex problem space that bridges history, religious studies, and sociology. It addresses the reality that while the region is frequently characterized by the harshness of its terrain and the rigidity of its governance, there exists a parallel narrative of underground faith communities and emerging religious movements. Adonai's work operates as an advanced textbook that guides readers beyond the headlines to examine the intersection of Pashtunwali, the traditional ethical code, and Islamic traditions, with these new expressions of faith. The text frames the Afghan context not merely as a humanitarian crisis, but as a unique theological and sociological case study where ancient cultural norms and modern ideological pressures collide. This academic resource is designed to help students and practitioners navigate the geographical and social realities of the region. Rather than offering a distant, purely academic critique, the book grounds its analysis in the tangible elements of the land and the lived experiences of its people. It explores the tension between the toughest country in the world and the God who comes close, suggesting that the severity of the environment plays a critical role in shaping the theological outlook of its inhabitants. Through this lens, the book examines the socio-political impact of Taliban ideology on religious freedom and local governance, offering a nuanced look at the safety of marginalized faith communities. The physical and political landscape of faith. The structural foundation of the text begins with a deep engagement with the land itself. In chapters such as The Toughest Country in the World and Begin with the Land, the text establishes that one cannot understand Afghan spirituality without first understanding the physical arena in which it operates. For students of sociology and history, this approach underscores the importance of environmental determinism and geographical context in shaping religious identity. The mountain faith described is not an abstract theology, but a survival mechanism honed by the Highlands. The book prompts readers to analyze how the rugged terrain influences local governance, creating micro-level systems of order that often operate independently of or in tension with macro-level state governance. Furthermore, the text delves into the specific political motivations that define the region's current reality. By dedicating a section to what the Taliban want, the book provides an analytical tool for dissecting the ideology that currently dominates the Afghan socio-political sphere. This examination is crucial for religious studies majors who must understand how fundamentalist ideologies impact the religious marketplace, restricting some freedoms while necessitating the evolution of underground movements. The text does not merely describe the Taliban as a political entity, but investigates the theological and cultural underpinnings of their governance, allowing for a more sophisticated understanding of the risks involved for those who diverge from state-sanctioned beliefs. This political analysis extends to the study of governance at both the macro and micro levels. The text encourages a comparative study of how authority is wielded in tribal councils versus national decrees, and how these power dynamics directly affect religious expression. Readers are guided to see the continuity and rupture between traditional Afghan governance and the specific brand of rule imposed by the Taliban. This layered understanding of authority is essential for anyone attempting to grasp the external pressures placed on the Mountain Faith communities, providing a realistic assessment of the constraints under which they operate. Gender dynamics and cultural intersections. A significant portion of the book's sociological inquiry focuses on the gendered dimensions of faith and culture in Afghanistan. The chapter Women and Men situates gender dynamics within the broader framework of Pashtunwali and Islamic tradition. For students of sociology, this section offers a critical examination of how patriarchal structures interact with religious devotion and social obligation. The text avoids simplifying these dynamics into mere oppression. Instead, it investigates the complex roles men and women play within the family and the faith community, particularly under the shadow of the Taliban's restrictive policies. The analysis provided in the text highlights the intersectionality of gender, culture, and religion. It suggests that the experience of faith and the dangers associated with it is distinct for women and men in this context. The socio-political impact of Taliban ideology mentioned in the book's description is most visibly manifested in the lives of women. Yet the text also hints at the specific spiritual burdens and responsibilities carried by men. By exploring these gendered realities, the book provides a comprehensive picture of the social structure, allowing readers to understand how underground faith communities must navigate traditional gender segregation while fostering a cohesive spiritual identity. This thematic focus is vital for understanding the emerging religious movements discussed in the key concepts. As these movements develop, they must inevitably reckon with the traditional gender roles prescribed by Pashtun culture. The text invites students to analyze how new faith communities adapt, challenge, or reinforce these roles in their effort to survive and grow. It poses an implicit study of cultural negotiation, where the preservation of faith often requires a careful balancing act between innovation and adherence to deeply ingrained social norms regarding men and women. The sociology of persecution and underground movements. The core of the book's contribution to religious studies lies in its exploration of faith under pressure. Chapters such as When Church is Dangerous and Mountain Faith offer a direct look at the high-stakes reality of practicing a marginalized faith in a hostile environment. The text categorizes these communities not just as victims of persecution, but as active agents of a distinct mountain faith. This concept serves as a theoretical framework for understanding how religious groups maintain cohesion and continuity when institutional structures are dismantled or forbidden. The book analyzes the emergence of underground faith communities as a sociological phenomenon. It examines the mechanisms of secrecy, trust, and communication that enable these groups to function. For the academic reader, this provides a case study in the sociology of secret societies and the anthropology of religion. The text details the dangers associated with practicing faith, moving beyond general observations to specific insights into the threats posed by the political climate. This creates a realistic picture of the cost of belief, challenging students to consider the psychological and social toll of living a double life where one's spiritual identity must be hidden from the public eye. Moreover, the text connects these contemporary struggles with the broader history of the region. By framing the current situation within the context of Afghan Mountain Faith, the author suggests a continuity of resilience. The persistence mentioned in the description is a key theme. The book investigates what specific elements of belief allow these communities to endure. This involves an analysis of how theological concepts are adapted to fit the immediate needs of suffering and secrecy, providing a robust resource for understanding the adaptability of religion in times of crisis. Humanitarian frameworks and the refugee crisis. Beyond the analysis of those remaining in the Highlands, the book addresses the massive social dislocation caused by the region's instability. The chapter, How to Bless Refugees, and the key concepts regarding humanitarian efforts shift the focus from internal survival to external support. The text provides theological and practical frameworks for engaging with the Afghan diaspora. This section is particularly relevant for students of international relations and practitioners of humanitarian aid, as it moves beyond logistics to address the culturally sensitive lens required for effective assistance. The book posits that true humanitarian support must account for the spiritual and cultural identity of the refugee. It argues against a secularized view of aid that ignores the religious dimensions of the refugee experience. Instead, it offers insights into blessing and supporting refugees in a way that honors their background and trauma. This involves understanding the specific cultural baggage, both good and bad, that refugees carry from the toughest country in the world into their new contexts. The text serves as a guide for cross-cultural ministry and aid, emphasizing that socio-political displacement does not erase spiritual needs. Furthermore, this section links the local to the global. It connects the micro-governance and persecution inside Afghanistan to the broader international response. The text challenges readers to consider how the mountain faith travels. Does it survive the transition to a refugee camp? How do the concepts of beauty and worship adapt when the physical mountain is left behind? By addressing these questions, the book expands its scope to cover the transnational aspects of Afghan religious life, making it a comprehensive resource for understanding the life cycle of displacement and faith. The role of beauty and worship in survival. Perhaps the most unique contribution of Adeni's work is its focus on aesthetics and liturgy as survival tools. The chapter Beauty and Worship, and the key concept regarding the role of beauty in sustaining spiritual identity, offer a counterintuitive perspective on life in a war zone. Standard political analyses rarely account for the necessity of beauty, yet this text argues that in the high-risk environment of the Afghan Highlands, beauty and traditional forms of worship are not luxuries, but essential components of spiritual stamina. This thematic strand invites students of theology and the arts to examine the function of worship beyond doctrine. The text suggests that for the underground communities and those living under strict Taliban rule, the preservation of beauty becomes an act of resistance. It explores how traditional Afghan appreciation for poetry, landscape, and hospitality is woven into the fabric of their faith. The mountain faith is described as one that integrates the harshness of the land with an appreciation for the divine presence, or the God who comes close, found in moments of beauty. The pedagogical value of this section lies in its humanization of the subject. It moves the discourse away from mere survival, eating, sleeping, hiding, to flourishing, or at least the attempt to flourish spiritually. The text provides a framework for understanding how liturgy and aesthetic appreciation serve as psychological anchors. For the practitioner, this implies that supporting these communities requires more than political advocacy. It requires an investment in the cultural and spiritual expressions that keep the community's soul alive. The book posits that stripping a community of its ability to worship in beauty is a form of spiritual violence, and thus the reclamation of beauty is a central part of their resistance. Theoretical implications for cross-cultural engagement. The book consolidates its various themes, geography, gender, persecution, and beauty, into a cohesive resource for cross-cultural engagement. It is explicitly positioned as an essential resource for practitioners working in cross-cultural ministry. The text synthesizes the sociological data and theological insights to create a model for interaction that is both respectful and realistic. It warns against naivety regarding the dangers while also guarding against cynicism regarding the future. The analysis of emerging religious movements within the text serves as a guide for understanding religious change. It suggests that these movements are not imports, but are deeply rooted in the intersection of Pashtunwali and Islamic traditions. This distinction is critical for students of missiology and religious studies, as it frames the new faith communities as indigenous expressions rather than foreign impositions. The book encourages a study of how these movements negotiate their identity within the existing cultural fabric, using the mountain faith concept to bridge the gap between old traditions and new beliefs. Furthermore, the text offers a hopeful yet realistic assessment of the future. This dual focus is key for academic study. It acknowledges the severe constraints imposed by the Taliban and the geopolitical landscape, but refuses to conclude that the extinction of these faith communities is inevitable. Instead, it points to the persistence and adaptation of belief systems as evidence of a dynamic rather than static religious future for Afghanistan. This forward-looking perspective equips readers to analyze trajectory and potentiality rather than just documenting the current state of decline or oppression. Afghan Mountain Faith stands as a multidimensional examination of the spiritual capacity to endure within one of the world's most hostile environments. By interweaving the socio-political realities of Taliban rule with the intimate dynamics of local culture, gender, and worship, Miriam Adonai provides a text that serves both academic rigor and practical application. The book effectively bridges the gap between the macro-level study of international relations and the micro-level understanding of individual spiritual practice, offering a comprehensive view of how faith survives when institutions fail. For students of history, sociology, and religious studies, as well as practitioners in humanitarian aid, this work offers a critical lens for viewing Afghanistan not as a graveyard of empires, but as a landscape of persistent, adapting faith. The text validates the significance of beauty, the complexity of cultural intersections, and the necessity of culturally sensitive support systems. Ultimately, it frames the mountain faith as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, grounded in the land yet reaching toward the divine, providing a vital resource for understanding the future of religion in Central Asia.